Welcome back. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, AFR Talk. So, bringing you this Santelli clip, you say, Crane, why are you bringing Santelli? Well, one, he says, what are we actually going to do to create jobs? That's a pretty big idea there. How are we actually going to, because that's what we need to get out of here, out of this, what we're in right now, economic growth. And what concerns me is I see even conservative think tanks moving toward the idea of how we transition people that have been out of work for an extended period of time and the way we give benefits. See, what's happening with unemployment benefits is 99 weeks, it runs out, so they shift over to disability. They're taking advantage of what they can to ostensibly survive, and that's what's going on. Do I fault them? No, I fault a government that has 99 weeks of unemployment, a federal government that does that. I fault the government for making promises it cannot keep, and I fault economic ignorance on what actually will bring us out of what we are in, which is cutting government spending as a percentage of the GDP or otherwise. Going back to our historic levels, which would be 18 to 20%, we're sitting at 23%. We were at 25%, and President Obama is bragging about going down 2%, which is what a politician does, not necessarily about President Obama, but that's the reality. The other point to that is, what is our policy when it comes to job growth? We are going to invest in education. We are going to invest in green technologies. The government's job is not to become the chief investor and train Americans. That is up to the free market. And I want the government out of student loans. I want the loan process to be deregulated further. I want people to be able to get loans, but also to be able to declare bankruptcy and have a true measure of the risk the bank is taking. But the government's spending money it doesn't have. See, when you're spending 40 cents of every dollar, borrowing 40 cents of every dollar, I think it's up to 46 cents, you can't keep making these promises and speaking to the glowing, wonderful world that you want to live in, which you've never gotten to, but you always promise. The land of green energy, green cars, solar and wind, and it's all paying off. But we have Fisker and we have Solyndra, and we have a lot of others, plus we have 80% of the Department of Energy loans going to political connections. Here is the point. You want to fix the problem? It's not rocket science. Strong dollar, lower government spending, take a look at the pricey regulations and recognize of what are they onerous? Are they necessary? Oh, and a clear tax code that has everybody with skin in the game, as opposed to just the top 10%, top 20%. And what we're seeing is 50+% not paying federal income tax and also getting money back. I don't fault the people. I mean, look, if it's available, you're going to do it. You need a policy that's truly fair. President Obama, what is fair for President Obama is a transformation of America, and he continues to do it. We found ourselves, as Margaret Thatcher did, in 1979 with a similar problem, and Jimmy Carter for us domestically as our president, of course. Here is Rick Santelli speaking to that time and speaking to the greatness of Margaret Thatcher. Roll it.
Think about how toothless Jimmy Carter was, hostages in Iran, and then a decade later between Reagan and Thatcher, we brought down the Iron Curtain. We need strong-willed, who cares about the polls, who cares about marketing and buzzwords. We need strong leaders. I heard somebody say today she may have torn the social fabric of Europe. Are you kidding? She tried to tear the socialism out of the fabric of Europe.
Amen. And we need something similar today, but it's only going to happen, unfortunately, when everybody understands where we are. That understanding, people are getting a better picture of it. They're getting a better picture of it because the stories I referred to are being exposed by the alternative media, the new media, the Fourth Estate, and what it was supposed to do, the likes of Jim Hoft and the Gateway Pundit. Jim, great to be with you.
Great to be with you, Crane.
I wanted to play for you. I got to confess, and I'm just going to tell everybody this. I watched Conan O'Brien, and I was laughing hysterically. And I go into watching Conan O'Brien at the White House press gala, and I'm thinking, okay, I know he's going to rip conservatives. He's going to mischaracterize us. I get that. I can take that, whatever. But I thought overall he was funny, and for what it was worth, I was sitting there laughing and laughing. But I'll tell you this. When the president said this concerned me. It's B2, or excuse me, it would be B3. B3. And I believe this is the president, and what he says here about the media and our responsibility. He's just talked about the first responders to the tragedy in Boston, the attack in Boston, and how we've got to, in the press, in the media, in government, we have to do a better job. We have to live up to what those folks put themselves in harm's way to do. And roll it.
And so these men and women should inspire all of us in this room to live up to those same standards, to be worthy of their trust, to do our jobs with the same fidelity and the same integrity and the same sense of purpose and the same love of country. Because if we're only focused on profits or ratings or polls, then we're contributing to the cynicism that so many people feel right now.
And Chuck Todd said this, B2. Roll it.
You know, what I wonder is how many people realized at the end when he did his, there's always this part at the end where they get serious for a minute. And it's usually the part where presidents say, I think the press has a good job to do and I understand what they have to do. He didn't say that. He wasn't very complimentary of the press. We all can do better. It did seem, I thought his pot shots, joke-wise, and then the serious stuff about the internet, the rise of the internet media and social media and all that stuff, he hates it, okay? He hates this part of the media. He really thinks that the buzzification, this isn't just about BuzzFeed or Politico and all this stuff, but he thinks that sort of coverage of political media has hurt political discourse. He hates it, and I think he was just trying to make that clear last night.
That's NBC's Chuck Todd, MSNBC's Chuck Todd. He's on both NBC main network talking about that. He's the White House correspondent for NBC News. Jim, why do you think the president feels that way?
That was such an interesting statement. I'm glad you played that, Crane. One thing I have noticed since Barack Obama has been president, and that is there has been one news organization that he's denied access at different press outings, and that was Fox News. And that's really the only news organization that's really given him any trouble. And so it's interesting then that he would be complaining about the news not, being, doing their work, when most of the media has been in his pocket, and that's not even no one can even contest that anymore. It's just well known that the media is very liberal, and the mainstream media, and so it was an interesting statement, Crane.
It is an interesting statement, and what gets me, Jim, is you attended a function this weekend, if I'm not mistaken, and when we look at the new media, did the new media create a story in 2004 to try to alter an election based on a bogus piece of paper? Did the new media do a CNN on the situation in Boston? Did the new media not report, or excuse me, did the new media report on the green energy programs and the absolute failure of those? I think the new media and you, being a leader in the new media, are holding these people to account.
Well, it goes on and on and on and on, Crane. Even in the White House Correspondents' Dinner, no one mentioned Gosnell, the doctor who's been his trial's been going on the past couple weeks. And if you look at the mainstream media, they've totally ignored that story. That story has only come from the media, from the internet, and from Fox News, trying to hold people accountable. And this is a man who is accused of having snipped necks of babies after they survived an abortion.
Heinous crimes, heinous events. But also what we see and the reality of abortion, what it is, whether it's inside the womb or outside the womb, it's the taking of life. But go ahead, Jim. I mean, what you're exposing, you're saying, what I'm getting from you is, of course he's not going to like us, We are exposing what the mainstream media has, in essence, omitted from their coverage for so long.
And the best interviews we've seen with Barack Obama have come from these little stations around the country where some reporter gets honest and asks him a few of the hard questions about Benghazi or gun control or whatever it is. We're just not seeing that from the mainstream media, and it really builds a mistrust in this country. And I think it aids to the conspiracy theories that we've seen so many of the past few years. When we have a media that's so irresponsible, then I think people start making up their own things in their mind because they know that they're not getting the truth from the mainstream media today.
I think that's just an outstanding point. When it came to the birther issue, and I'm not a birther, but I will say this, all he had to do was what Trump demanded, which was, here, we're going to bring this story up until you answer the question. But he knows what he can do with people is say, anybody who disagrees with me, oh, they're just like the birther crew, when there were legitimate questions that needed to be answered and follow-ups, and all he had to do was answer those things. And it works to his political advantage. Great analysis, Jim.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you for being with us. As always, you're featured on nothingbuttruth.com as one of the main news feeds out there, the Gateway Pundit. He's award-winning, and there's a reason why. Jim Hoft, thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Crane.
Take care. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. On the flip side, Hans von Spakovsky, senior legal analyst at the Heritage Foundation, pardon me. And, did you hear? Election fraud. Yeah, actual election fraud. You mean Bush fraud? No, 2008 style. Hans has the report. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. AFR Talk.